We have a special three-man Friday episode for you, talking a little bit of NC State wrestling as they have a massive match on Friday. But first of all, we got to talk about this debacle in Chapel Hill.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our Friday sponsor for you is FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and win $150 back in bonus bets. That first $5 bet wins. Head on over to FanDuel.com in order to get started today. Happy Friday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. And we have a Friday special guest. It's Mike Jones. Who? Mike Jones, one of our favorite listeners for Locked On Wolfpack. He's also been a little bit of an NC State wrestling insider for us. We brought him on to explain some NC State wrestling a little bit later in the show. Massive meet in Blacksburg on Friday. Gentlemen, first of all, Chapel Hill. On Wednesday evening, it was a 24-point drubbing. I shared my thoughts a little bit earlier on Thursday. Mike, we'll kick it to you first, and then, Kenton, we're going to get into this thing. Mike, as a fan, your thoughts from what you saw from NC State men's basketball?
Well, first of all, it was absolutely atrocious to watch. I had to cut it off a few different times, but then, my general insight, and wondering what was going on, I turned it back on, and it was still just god-awful. But overall, it gave me vibes from the 50 some odd point game a few years ago during the ice storm and whatnot. But yeah, that's generally how I was feeling the entire time.
Kenton, let it rip.
I wore my Letterman jacket today for a reason.
Oh, here we go.
Very seriously. Normally, I like to get on here and joke and all that. This block S means something to me.
It should.
Both of my Achilles and my bicep. Both of my Achilles and my left bicep tendon. Gone. For good old State. And through the bicep tear, I kept practicing because I was like, the defense needs me. I read one of the most embarrassing quotes. That I thought that we won it last year was bad until I saw this team doesn't have superstars. This is from Kevin Keats post-game. From the good folks over there at Pack Pride. This team doesn't have superstars. There's no Jarkel Journer, Taquavion Smith, or DJ Horn, or Burns. Guys that can go out and average 18 points a game. We have a bunch of really good players, which I knew from the start, that can fight. What fight? Where was the fight? I don't think people understand. It's misleading to say NC State won the second half in this game because you lost the first half by 28 points. What fight? The Dirty Foot Club let their foot off the gas. Because had they mashed it and said, hey, we want to beat these guys by 50, they might have did it. I am thoroughly, and when I say thoroughly, I mean thoroughly disappointed on all levels. Grayson, you and I talked about how in the win that just came up, it was all about get out to a fast start. Don't let guys beat you from the gate. Get out to a fast start. Make something happen from the start. This start, you kept it close-ish for the first 5 minutes or so, and then all of a sudden the floodgates just open on you. And the worst part of this whole deal to me, when I look at this game and I say, what happened here more than anything else? This was a team that it was very clear when UNC started to hit a couple shots, they gave up.
Yeah.
They gave in. They rolled over and said, hey, and this is why I say that block S means something to me, because wearing that block S doesn't just talk about who you are as a player or as a team. It also says something about who you absolutely despise. Am I going to sit up here and say, every game I played in, pull up the tape, I was fantastic? No, I had one of the worst games of my life in the red and white at NC State. Played against Clemson for 3 plays. All 3 of those plays, I ended up in the dirt. I own it. But you know what? Go look up the tape of me against the Dirty Foot Club. Go look up. There was never a time where any of their quarterbacks felt safe if we on the field. There was never a time where any of their backs were like, oh, yeah, we're going to play NC State today. It's going to be a good game, boys. We're going to have it. This, again, have some damn pride about yourself. Have something in you. For those of you who don't know, the Wolves outside of Carter Finley Stadium, double C, double P, double S, confidence, courage, passion, pride, strength, spirit. I saw none of those out of this team in that day. I saw none of them. And it was flatly embarrassing. I did not see anything that resembled an ACC basketball team until it was very clear UNC was damn near playing the walk-ons. This is embarrassing. To let those bozos put in the walk-ons on you, I cannot relate. I would never be able to relate. And again, it just don't mean enough. It don't mean enough from the top down. Like I said, everybody who knows me knows I'm a Lions fan. Hey, you know what though? The lovable loser syndrome ain't being set in by Dan Campbell because there's not we did great last year, guys. So 15-2 is good enough. I took this game personally and we lost it because of me. That's what great coaches do. Not, we just don't have a Peyton Manning throwing the ball. We just don't have we'd love to have a guy like a Drew Brees, but we've just got – no, that's not – this is embarrassing, man. And again, I am as disheartened by Keith as I have any coach because even the deficiencies we talk about with this team, okay, like that's who put the team together. Like you can't complain about the food being bad. You can't say, man, this meal is atrocious. All I had to cook with was Spam and 3-day-old bread. You went to the damn grocery store. You were the one who said, oh, give me that Spam. Oh, that bread right there, it's the cheap stuff. Bring it here. And this is what you get, man. This is, again, just an all-out embarrassment in Chapel Hill, the likes of which anybody that this Block S means something to should be embarrassed to be a part of.
One of the most disheartening things in my mind, I spoke about this a little bit earlier as well, is even in a down year, of course, it's been a horrible year for NC State, but a down year for UNC. They're talking about if Hubert Davis is going to survive this season, and yet and still you can almost set your watch that they will still find a way to sweep NC State. It happened way back in 2019 with Cole Anthony. That was one of their worst teams ever at that time, still swept NC State. And despite everything we do have going on, even in a down year, they drub you by 24 points on national television. And you did think, to Mike's point, you did think it was hurtling toward a 2017 performance when that one they beat us by 51. So I guess thank God that didn't happen again. But to Kenton's point, probably could have happened if they really wanted it to. Even though that Carolina team this year is not as good as the one as 2017 was, they still probably could have hung 50 on us on Wednesday night if they wanted to. It's embarrassing. And the comments I talked about Brevin Galloway from Clemson a couple of years ago, they, not just Clemson, but I'm sure Duke and Louisville and Florida State and Virginia, all these schools in the ACC, they look at NC State on the schedule and they say, ooh, NC State, that smells like a W. You think Carolina ever has a problem getting up to play NC State? No, because Roy Williams hated State, made it known that he hated State, and his teams were always, I can't believe I'm giving him credit right now, but they were always ready to play NC State. Why is it Keith's teams never feel like they're ready to play the Dirty Foot Club? They never feel like they're ready to rise up to the moment, understand the stakes that were at play there, potentially knocking Carolina out of the NCAA tournament contention, which is still ridiculous. And NC State tries to get into the ACC tournament. Those stakes, amongst the rivalry by itself, that should be enough for you to be ready in a game like this one. And I guess it was close for the first 45 seconds, but after that, NC State was lost. The effort went out the window, the heart went out the window, the focus went out the window, and so the apathy came in the window. And that's where we are here yet again. This fan base cannot stand what we're watching right now from our men's basketball team, and we're tired of it. Yes, he won an ACC championship. Yes, he went to the Final Four. What is that doing for you this season? Absolutely nothing. We're going in the wrong direction. The roster is not constructed well. They don't play well together. The rotations are flawed. Everything that can possibly go wrong with this team this year has. And now they're in the pit. They got 5 regular season games left, and I don't have a lot of confidence that they're going to make it into the ACC tournament.
I just want to let one more thing fly before we move forward here. I know that this team did not try. I know that this team did not fight in last night's game. I know that the Block S nor beating the Dirty Foot Club meant enough to them last night because of one stat. Does anybody want to guess what that stat is?
Rebounding?
Re-damn-bounding. Not only is this a down year for Carolina, do you know why everybody is saying it's a down year? Do you know what everybody is pointing to outside of Coach Hubert Davis? What's the next thing that everybody is saying? Oh, this is the problem.
They said Carolina's front court's been horrible all year, and they have not been able to rebound.
The front court is horrible and cannot rebound. And yet and still, they found a way to double up on for every time an NC State player came down with a rebound, 2 more were going to UNC. And you're telling me, again, I can live with we don't have superstars. If your team goes out there and they give it everything they got and RJ Davis hits a Dame Lillard type shot where he's going from the logo contested and it's like, hey, you can't ask for nothing more. If a guy can hit that shot, you put your shoulders up and you say, hey, this wasn't our day. This game was not that. This was a team that was not hustling. This was a team that if I'm not as talented as you, every loose ball, I'm going to beat you to it. If I'm not, hell, even if I'm more talented than you, I want to do that. But especially if I know I'm at a talent deficiency, I'm giving you everything I got for every second I'm on the court. That team looked listless. That team looked lifeless. That team looked like they were just, by the end of it, hoping to get a mercy rule. They were looking like they were hoping that the refs would put a running clock on this thing because of how embarrassing it got. So, again, 40-21 against a team whose front court has been rightfully maligned all season long. You get what you get. You get what you earned. Because this, again, just a pathetic display. And yes, I blame Keats for putting this team together first and foremost. But players, have some damn pride. If the Block S don't mean nothing to you, does name on the back of your jersey mean nothing? I mean, damn, does any name mean anything to you at this point? Again, this was a game where I saw from jump, okay, this team is they putting up a little fight early. I was worried, but immediately when Carolina started hitting shots, you could feel the air come out of guys. You could see them dejected. You could see the head start pointing down. You could see the body language shift. It's just embarrassing. And mind you, you're not even halfway through the first half, and guys are hanging their heads. Guys are acting like the game was already over. Again, to be out-rebounded by 20 rebounds to a team whose front court is struggling, Keats, you take the first blame. The assistant coaches take the next blame for not coaching them better. Players, y'all take the blame too, because this is, I mean, I struggle to even find the words to properly quantify what an embarrassment this was for NC State. Stadium half empty, like it always is in Dirty Footland. Because like we all know, like I talked about before, when you see that shirt in Walmart and you're like, oh, this shirt's in Walmart. I like this team now. That you not going to be there when your team's not great, which they aren't this year. But you know what? Hell, we made them look like Rasheed Wallace and Michael Jordan were walking through that damn door. We made them look like James Worthy and Raymond Felton were walking through that damn door. Just embarrassing, man.
Mike, any final thoughts before we jump forward to something positive, which is NC State wrestling?
So I have a few comments. So first of all, don't be hating on spam sandwiches, Kenton. Like they got me through many meals during college and my time in the Army. The couple things that I wanted to mention on basketball, you were talking about the life coming out of them and everything. It seemed like to me, I think it was right after the 16-minute timeout, or maybe even the 12-minute timeout in the first half when they switched it up to press and they had like 2 or 3 turnovers right there in a row. That was when it was like the switch flipped and they were just completely lifeless afterwards. With the exception, I did see a lot of good things, of course, but some bad from the young guys, as we've been yelling about the entirety of the season about getting them more minutes. Parker is just Energizer Bunny. Like, that dude's always going, positive or negative, with, no matter what the outcome is, he's always, going full speed. Last comment, just as a kind of overarching, like, feel upon the program itself.
Yeah.
And isn't just specific to Keats, but this even, goes back to like when Godfrey was here too. I'm sure you guys have probably seen the clip from JJ's podcast that he used to do when he was interviewing Tatum, from when they were talking about when Tatum played at Duke and they lost to that team with Dennis Smith on it, and how Coach K, like, absolutely, basically went full Bobby Knight and was throwing chairs and stuff and locked them up, kicked them all out of the locker room and all this other kinds of stuff because they shouldn't be losing to that team because of how bad they are. That's like just to me, that's an overarching sentiment of what the program has been the last, excluding, what was it, March like 15th through April the like 4th last year, of the last 15 plus years, if not longer, probably even longer than that.
Yeah, it's a great point. Teams are legitimately embarrassed at the thought of losing to NC State. That's where we currently stand. And yeah, last March and April were great, but we've fallen immediately right back into this pit where teams look at NC State on the schedule, say, that smells like a W, because if it's not, our whole program will be in shambles. That's like the lifeblood of NC State right now, and it's embarrassing. We've had enough of it. I've certainly had enough of it on this episode alone. Coming up next, we're going to turn Mike loose. He's going to tell us all about NC State wrestling and why you need to tune in on Friday. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Our Friday sponsor is FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is only just getting started. There's no better place to get in on this action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets all throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off and you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can always stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine all of your live bets into a same-game parlay. I personally love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it lets me make every moment of the game that much more exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can bet just $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets. That first $5 bet wins. Head on over to FanDuel.com in order to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 back in bonus bets, guaranteed. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Middle portion of our Friday show, let's talk some NC State wrestling. We've had multiple people ask us to talk some wrestling over the course of the last month. No more consistent than our very own Mike Jones here. We've brought Mike on to explain NC State wrestling to those that aren't really wrestling people. That includes Kenton and myself. And although we're not wrestling guys per se, the things we do understand about NC State wrestling, they're great, elite even. They constantly win ACC championships. They have individual national champions. They've had Olympians come out from this program. And Coach Pop has done a phenomenal job at keeping this program in the wrestling spotlight, for college wrestling, that is, each and every season. So, Mike, we understand they're coming up on the last meet of the regular season. It's on the road against the Hokies of Virginia Tech. It's a ranked matchup. NC State is 7. Virginia Tech is 10. You've brought a slideshow with you to help this presentation for NC State wrestling. Let's kick this up and explain to the people why they should pay attention on Friday.
Sure thing. So first thing I wanted to kind of talk about was so NC State versus Virginia is technically classified as what's called a dual meet, or a dual team match, or dual meet, something like that. So what that is just one team versus another team. You're going head to head versus another team. There are different tournaments and such where there will be like 3 or 4 teams and you kind of like inter wrestle, but that's way more down the rabbit hole than what we need to get. Dual team match, one team versus the other team. That's what this is. So think, like football or basketball or anything like that, where you're just facing off against one team.
Okay.
You have 10 total weight classes. The weight classes are listed there on the slide. It just goes off of weight, depending on like certain tournaments and stuff. And once you get to nationals, if you're wrestling multiple days in a row, they might adjust it and give you like an extra couple pounds to, be able to eat and such things like that for those that are cutting weight. As far as the scoring, so you have your individual matches. So like the 125, 125 match, 133 match, so on and so forth. So each one of those individual matches are kind of containerized within themselves, which affect the overall dual meet itself. So in the individual match, depending on the outcome of the match, so let's say like you two guys are wrestling, if Kenton wins by 3 or 4 points, that's technically what they call a minor decision. As you can see in the section down below, a minor decision will give the team 3 points. If you got a major decision, it would give the team 4 points, so on and so forth. A tech fall is essentially the mercy rule. As soon as one wrestler gets up by 15 points, then the match is immediately stopped, and their team is awarded 5 points for that. A pin, if you've ever seen, WrestleMania or something like that, everybody kind of gets an idea of what a pin is. In collegiate wrestling, a pin is when one wrestler controls on top and is able to get the shoulder blades of the bottom wrestler on the mat and held there. Usually they do it like kind of by lifting the head up a little bit. It kind of exposes the shoulder blades and that kind of thing. That gives you 6 points. If you happen to tune into the Stanford match last week, there was actually a forfeit. Vince Robinson, the 125-pounder for NC State, didn't get to wrestle anybody because they forfeited. And those will act as a pin, or 6 points like a pin as well. About Coach Pop, you mentioned Coach Pop having all his success here at NC State. Yeah. He actually wrestled at Oklahoma State, who we just wrestled about a month or so ago now, under John Smith, the legendary coach that was out there for like 30 some odd years. And then when he came to State, he's been here for 13 total years now. And, we got 3 national champions, 2 of which were actually both Nick Wisdowski. And then the last one was Mike Machiavello, which his little brother is actually on the team now. He's an underclassman. You got 7 NCAA finalists, all those other accolades there, ton of All-Americans, ACC champions, you name it. They're currently on a 6th straight as far as the ACC tournament goes, 19-24. And another reason why this matchup with Virginia Tech is so big is that they've won, as you can see, 2 of the last 3 regular season dual meet championships. I believe it's the last 9 or last 10 has either been NC State or Virginia Tech. So both programs are kind of the pinnacle when it comes to ACC wrestling. There are other teams that are picking it up. They've had like a year or 2 here and there that they've been really good. Pitt's always a tough out. And the Dirty Foot Club, as you guys so eloquently put them, usually we'll have a couple guys that are pretty good. They had a national champion a couple years ago, but that's kind of how the pecking order usually works.
Wait, you're telling me that their head coach hasn't succeeded in turning our fair weather wrestling fans into Dirty Foot Club fans?
Not so much. Considering NC State wrestling usually averages more attendance than Dirty Foot Club football, it's pretty close, but we'll see after the first couple weeks if they're still on the Belichick hype train or not. But that's another conversation for another time.
So a couple questions for you, Mike. You mentioned Vince Robinson, and I think it was last week. One of our good Twitter followers, TRA05, wanted to know the top 5 current athletes for NC State. We got a multitude of answers, and I kept seeing Vince Robinson amongst a lot of people replying. Tell us about Vince Robinson and what makes him so special on this wrestling team.
So Vince has really kind of burst onto the scene this year. He's actually a redshirt freshman, believe it or not.
Okay.
He's undefeated in matches that he's been able to finish. He did have an injury DQ earlier in the season. I believe it was at one of the tournaments that he tweaked something and then couldn't continue. So technically that goes as a loss. But matches that he's actually wrestled in, he hasn't lost yet this year. Earlier in the season when we wrestled Oklahoma State, overall the dual meet didn't go as we would have liked it to, but he was the lone bright spot at the time. I think he was ranked about 5th or 6th maybe, and upset the number 2 guy at 125, Spratley for Oklahoma State. So he was kind of the lone bright spot that night. But one way dual meets can kind of get out of get out of hand as far as scoring wise. Like even if the individual match is 5-4, the other team, the one team still gets all of the points. So you could literally lose every match by 1 point and you still lose 30-0. So it's, it kind of tilts in that sense.
Just to let y'all know, we all love 10K Vino on this show. Vince, if you're listening, keep doing your thing, boy. You're putting on out there. Now, let me ask you this, Mike. What, if anything, do you think has allowed Pop to continue such success over such a long period of time? Because we're talking about 12 years here, and yet you're looking at, if you break these numbers down per year, 2-3 all-conference guys per year, multiple All-Americans per year. What is allowing him to have this type of success in recruiting and in actual performance when they get here?
So number one, you just mentioned it, recruiting. A lot of the guys in the Big 10 and Big 12, they don't look at, NC State or the ACC as like wrestling powers, quote unquote. But Pop's done a fantastic job when it comes to recruiting. Anybody who's casually seen NC State wrestling over the last 5 to 6 years knows one of the Hidlay brothers. He went and picked them out of Pennsylvania a few years back. Before that, Jack, whose younger brother, actually wrestles for the team now, but he's redshirting. He picked him out of Connecticut, so he goes in all over. And there's a couple guys now from Ohio and Pennsylvania and Jersey and stuff like that he does a fantastic job when it comes to recruiting. Number two, I would say, has to be the culture that he's actually built. Younger guys coming in, and if you win your wrestle off and you earn your spot as a true freshman, then you're going at it and you're wrestling day one. That's one thing that I've always loved about wrestling is that, hey, you're in front of me, and I think I'm better than you, then I can wrestle you off for that starting spot. There is no, well, coach said, there's none of that nonsense. You wrestle the guy in front of you, and if you win, you're the starter. They also, in the last few years, I can't remember exactly.
What you're saying is young guys getting playing time is a good thing.
Yep.
If any other NC State coaches want to implement this, perhaps, not going to say any names, Kevin Andre Keats, not going to say any names, but if anybody would like to also kind of take that thought of like, the young guys are playing well, let's play more. Proceed.
The other thing that definitely helps along with that culture is a few years ago, I can't remember exactly what year it was they started it, but they started the Wolfpack Wrestling Club, which guys will actually come and train here for like Olympic trials. There's even been some MMA guys like Daniel Cormier's come and trained with the guys at the Wolfpack Wrestling Club a few times. It's just been, great to see the growth here, not only for NC State wrestling, but just overall. Yeah.
And then we're going to get into a Friday meet preview here with Virginia Tech. But last question in this portion for you, Mike. When you're looking at this team this year and everything they've accomplished so far, again, last regular season meet coming up here, what do you see the ceiling for this team being?
In terms of the ACC or nationally?
Both.
So in terms of the ACC, I think they definitely have the ability, if they wrestle good during the ACC tournament, in order to win it for sure, to make number 7 in a row and number 8 overall for Pop. As far as nationally, I think a top 10 finish at nationals is definitely possible, but the March Madness, as everybody likes to call it, is its own beast. There's low seeds that knock off top guys all the time, but yeah.
Should we expect any individual national champions this year, basically?
Individuals, there's a couple that stand a chance, but they're going to have to get some good bracket luck and have some upsets at places. Vince is actually one of them that if he keeps wrestling like he is, there's a very real shot if he gets a decent seed that he could do it. Dude is phenomenal to watch.
Cool deal. All right, well, coming up next, we're going to get into Mike's preview for this matchup with Virginia Tech. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Last couple of minutes here of our Friday show. Mike Jones, our special guest, our wrestling informant, is here to give you a preview. Number 7, NC State on the road, the final regular season meet on the road at number 10, Virginia Tech. I understand that if NC State wins this meet, they win the ACC outright. So, Mike, our first question, I guess, What is truly at stake for the Wolfpack on Friday night?
So it's pretty simple, actually. If they win, they're the sole champion for the regular season of ACC wrestling. If they lose, then they will share the title with, at very least, Virginia Tech, depending on how the Dirty Foot Club, as you guys like to call them, doesn't theirs. Then they will also share in that title as well. So a few weeks back, I know I was tweeting you guys about it. NC State wrestled against Dirty Foot Club and beat them. And earlier in the season, although they were dealing with some injuries on Virginia Tech side, Dirty Foot Club actually beat Virginia Tech. So Virginia Tech already has one loss on the season as far as ACC matchups goes. But yeah, pretty simple. You win the ACC. You lose, then you have to share it.
Just how we like it. Destiny's in our own hands. All right. Yep. You have the projected matchups here on the screen. Give us your top couple matchups to keep an eye out for on Friday.
Sure. Well, as we alluded to earlier, 125, as you can see, that's a top 5 matchup with our boy Vince Robinson going at it. He's been absolutely electric, not only, during the match, but afterwards with his backflips and stuff like that after he wins. He's been phenomenal to watch this year. The next one to watch for me would be 149. You got Coy Biskins going up against Caleb Henson. Caleb Henson from Virginia Tech is the defending national champion at that weight. Okay. He is very, very good. So one thing that will tilt a dual match a lot of times is avoiding bonus points. So when I say bonus points, I mean either a major decision, a tech fall, or a pin. If a guy who's, technically, not outclassed, but somebody who's like the underdog, if they can stop bonus points from happening, it will greatly help the team out. So that's one thing I'm looking for there. Another one I'm looking for is 184. So you got Fishback versus TJ Stewart. Fishback and Stewart actually wrestled twice last year, and Stewart won both times. Once during the dual meet and then once in the ACC finals at the tournament. Fishback's been wrestling pretty good as of late. He had a little bit of a slow start this year, but Stewart isn't really looking the same as he was last year. So if Fishback can get, a W there or even some bonus points, that will drastically help it swing in the Pack's favor. Last but not least, looking at heavyweight for Isaac Trumbull. Isaac Trumbull actually a few years ago was a 197 pounder, and due to the randomness that is wrestling as a whole, he redshirted last year to get ready for the Olympic trials, went and won a gold medal at the U23s, and now he's back and is wrestling heavyweight. He's only lost, I believe it's 2 or 3 times, and 2 of those were to the heavyweight from Oklahoma State.
Jeez. No big deal.
Yeah. He's been doing great at heavyweight. Part of his issue at 97 the last time, from what I heard, was that massive weight cut was impacting him too much, and he wasn't able to focus on technique as much and was focused more upon the cutting weight side. So now that he's, bumped up to heavyweight, he's, flourishing. When he came back this season, the guy who had been wrestling heavyweight for NC State the last couple of seasons, he beat him out in the wrestle off. As I said, hey, I want your job, I'm going to take it from you, kind of thing. After he beat him, he transferred to Lehigh, I believe it was. So Trumbull's a beast. He's getting bonus points in pretty much every match he's wrestled this season, other than those couple that he's lost. So we hope he can get some bonus points out of that one.
So let me ask you a dumb question, even though there are no dumb questions. Are these weighted, I guess pun intended, differently? Like if a heavyweight match, if you win that one, is it weighted differently than say like a 125? Or is it just the accumulation of points in that match?
Nope, just the accumulation of points. Yeah, like I said, each individual match is its own separate thing, because you have the individual side of it, then you have the team side of it. It's kind of like tennis in that aspect for those that know tennis. Like you have like your individual matchups in tennis, but then, it still affects the team.
Yeah, Grayson asked that because you mentioned him and me wrestling earlier, and he wanted to know, like, if there was a locked on bracket happening, how would that cross weight class thing work? No, but in all seriousness, Mike, man, we thank you so much for coming on and explaining wrestling to us. Let me ask you one question about this that, most people don't understand it. Me and Grayson aren't going to lie and say, hey, we understand at a high level. Give us your predictions for Friday night before we get you out of here.
Ooh.
Who walks away the overall winner in this dual meet? Give us your prediction for who walks away as the overall winner.
Unfortunately, I think Virginia Tech walks away as the winner. I'm going to say 15-12, but it's going to the last X amount of ACC championships have come from either one of these two schools. The last, I think it's 6 or 7 times they've wrestled, it's been within like a 4-point difference total. So it's going to be a close match, I have to say. And it's going to be all about, who can get bonus points where. The 141 match as well. You have potentially Tracy and Homan for NC State Wrestling. Tracy had been the starter for most of the season, but Pop decided last week against Stanford to bump up Homan, who's technically a 133-pounder, and he wrestled the guy from Stanford who was nationally ranked, and he actually beat him. So if one of those guys can pull an upset and or avoid bonus points, then that kind of thing. But definitely the tail ends of, if they start at 125, the tail end matches are going to be the keys for State. If either one of Vince or Isaac Trumbull lose, then it's not going to be looking good, I have to say.
Good deal. Well, our wrestling insider, Mike Jones, thank you so much for joining us here on our Friday episode. Big time matchup for NC State Wrestling on Friday, number 7 at number 10, Virginia Tech. If you are a fan of wrestling and been waiting for us to talk about it on here, we brought Mike on here for a reason. Thank you, Mike, for joining us. You got your wrestling content. And if you've never watched NC State Wrestling before, perhaps Friday night will be your best opportunity to do so. Thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment box, mash that subscribe button if you have not already. We'll see you right back here on Monday for more. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.